In 27 BCE, Octavian came into power, and his empire stretched from Egypt to Spain, from Britain to Arabia. There was no superpower that could rival him. He was rich beyond any other ruler before him. All of Europe and North Africa was subject to his rule. But let's be honest, he wasn't much of an innovator. He didn't have the charisma of Caesar. He didn't start a new republic or a golden age. Instead, he established a dynasty. This would be the last great age of Roman history, but it was also the beginning of its decline. We all know what happened next: the corruption, the crises, the barbarian invasions. And by 476 CE, the Western Roman Empire fell. But here is where things get weird. As we begin our story in 27 BCE, the Eastern Roman Empire would go on for another 1,000 years. It was during this time that Rome invented the official secret language of the Illuminati, created the Holy Grail, and held up the Western world against the armies of darkness. Just kidding. Those things never happened. But even though the eastern half of the Roman Empire would survive so much longer, it wouldn't leave behind much of a legacy. But why is that? Here are some reasons why. Number 1. The Egyptian legacy. But why did ancient Egypt fall apart? Well, there are a few prevailing theories, but most historians agree that it had something to do with the pharaohs. From around 1085 to 332 BC, Egypt was ruled by a series of weak pharaohs who couldn't control the country or keep it safe. They were either too young, like Cleopatra, or too senile, like Ptolemy XIII. These bad leaders caused social unrest, political instability, and economic strife, which led to the decline of Egypt. But at least they went out with a bang, because right when Egypt became a province of the Ptolemaic kingdom, Alexander the Great showed up with his massive army and sacked the city of Alexandria. Though he wouldn't see the riches of the Temple of Artemis, one of the ancient world's 7 wonders, nor would he conquer the only surviving member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Cleopatra. Their love story has gone down in infamy. Even Hollywood has made multiple movies about their romance. But not even Romeo and Juliet could defy fate. After giving birth to their son Caesarion, Cleopatra would take her own life. Not long after, Caesarion would meet the same fate. Egypt would fall into the hands of Octavian, who would make it a province of the Roman Empire. Number 2. A city of sand. When Rome was at the height of its glory, it was widely regarded as the greatest city in the world. The Colosseum, the aqueducts, the Forum, the Pantheon, Trajan's Column, the roads, the sanitation system, everything was bigger and better in Rome. For example, while people in Greece and Egypt were walking around barefoot, Romans wore sandals. The sands of the desert may have built up the pyramids, but they also ruined the infrastructure of Rome. The sand would get caught in the cracks of buildings, eventually causing them to crumble. The sand would damage the roads, the aqueducts, everything. In addition to the effects of climate change, these are just a few of the reasons why so little remains of ancient Rome today. Number 3. Too big to rule. One of the biggest problems facing the Roman Empire was simply its size. At its peak, it covered almost 5 million square kilometers. To put that in perspective, that's about the same size as Brazil. And yet Rome had no way of efficiently governing such a large territory. Sure, there were competent rulers throughout Rome's history, but communication was so slow and the borders were so long and unprotected that even the best of Rome's emperors couldn't stop invaders from breaching the borders. Rome was too big to rule, and as soon as the economy slowed or there was a military crisis, the entire empire was thrown into chaos. Number 4. A questionable religion. If you want to unify a group of people, religion can be a great tool. If you want to tear down a society, religion can also be a powerful weapon. Throughout history, countless wars have been fought over religion. Entire cities have been leveled because of religious differences. During the reign of Nero, he blamed Christians for starting a fire that destroyed much of Rome. He had hundreds of them killed. And it wasn't until Constantine converted that Christianity became the official religion of Rome. After that, everyone who didn't follow the teachings of Jesus Christ were seen as enemies of the state. Pagans, Jews, atheists, they were all persecuted. In fact, even Christians weren't safe. If you didn't belong to the right denomination, you would suffer brutal torture and a horrible death. Diocletian tried to revive the old Roman paganism, and this caused persecution under his successor, Maxentius. And under the rule of Julian, pagans suffered greatly. But Rome's diversity and tolerance were part of the reason why it became such a great city. It was a melting pot of cultures, religions, and ideas. But once Rome decided to become a Christian state, its influence would decline. And speaking of influential empires, let's look at number 5, the legacy of Rome. The Roman Empire may have fallen in 476 CE, but its influence still lives on today. In fact, some scholars believe that we are currently living in the last days of the Roman Empire. That's because modern-day Italy, Spain, Portugal, France, and the former Ottoman states are all technically still a part of the Roman Empire. Sure, their culture and government may have changed, but on paper, they are still a part of Rome. Now sure, not many people realize that, but the fact is that these countries are still bound to the Roman Empire. However, that is nothing compared to the cultural influence of Rome. The ruins of Rome are visited by millions of tourists each year. People all over the world have studied Roman law, Roman architecture, and Roman engineering. Even the English language has been heavily influenced by Latin. There are literally thousands of English words that come from Latin. And since English is the most widespread language in the world, this means that the legacy of Rome will continue to live on for centuries to come. Of course, not all Romans were great. There were tyrants, corrupt politicians, and power-hungry generals. But Rome's influence is undeniable. Without Rome, we might not have had the scientific revolution, the Renaissance, or the Enlightenment. But why is that? Let's look at number 6. A world of ideas. So why does Rome have such a huge influence on the world today? Well, part of it has to do with their ideas. You see, the Romans weren't just a bunch of soldiers and slaves. They had some pretty smart people too, like Cicero, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Pliny the Younger, Virgil, Livy, Ovid, Horace, Caesar, Augustus. The list goes on. They produced some of the greatest philosophers, historians, poets, and statesmen in history. But of course, none were more influential than Jesus. His idea of turning the other cheek had a profound impact on Western civilization. Some of Rome's ideas were good, but some were bad. For example, Rome believed in the concept of natural law, which stated that all people are born free and equal and have certain unalienable rights. This idea would later inspire the American Revolution and the French Revolution. But Rome also believed that it was the destiny of the Roman people to rule the world. This idea of Roman exceptionalism led to the conquest of countless people and the destruction of countless cities. Rome felt that it was better than everyone else and that it had the right to dominate everyone else. This attitude would lead to the downfall of Rome, but its ideas would live on, both the good and the bad. Number 7. Engineering marvels. Another reason why Rome is so influential is because of their engineering. They constructed aqueducts, roads, bridges, public works, buildings, sewers, walls, fortifications. They were master builders, and much of their engineering is still standing today. We marvel at the Colosseum, the Pantheon, the aqueducts, Trajan's Column. Even the Tower of Pisa in Rome is mostly a product of Roman engineering. Today, engineers study Roman building techniques to learn how they built roads and aqueducts without modern equipment, and this knowledge helps us build better infrastructure today. Number 8. The Eternal City. Rome was considered the Eternal City because it never fell. It stood for 29 centuries. It was home to the most powerful empire in the ancient world. It was considered the center of the universe, but now it's home to nothing. Well, not exactly. Rome is still the capital of Italy, and it's home to almost 3 million people. It's a bustling metropolis, the third largest in Europe after Istanbul and Moscow. Many of the greatest Italian artists, chefs, fashion designers, and entrepreneurs live in Rome. It's a global city, a world capital. But if you ask any archaeologist, they'll tell you that Rome's true capital is the ruins, the Forum, the Colosseum, Palatine Hill, the Pantheon. Rome's greatest treasures are its ruins. We flock to these ruins from around the world because they remind us of the greatness of Rome. So there you have it, 8 reasons why Rome lasted so long. But don't forget, Rome's story started long before Octavian ever took power. To learn how Rome was founded, check out the video on screen. And thank you for watching.